neighbors, welcome to another just neighborly, congenial episode of the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. Lawn care magic, HOA magic, neighborly care magic, who knows? We'll find out. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my friend, co-host, and guy who's a little too into blueprints,
Alex Dandino.
All right, before today's visit to the neighborhood, a little business, people. What are you waiting on? Go join us over on Patreon. That's right, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. You know you're loving the show. God, I hope so. Don't make me look like a rube for coming out so hot. Guys, you know you love the show. You know it gets you sweaty, gets you a little heated up when you hear our voices. You know you want more of that in your life. You want something to walk around as an armor of coolness. That's us, guys. Go over to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod for even more amazing content. For as little as $1 a month, you come join the community, see what we're working on. Say hi to me and Alex and our awesome friends over there. Guys, you get access to vote on the movies you want to hear. Specifically in Patreon exclusive podcasts. We're doing feature-length commentary. We're dropping our Tales from the Crypt mini-series. Alex and I are working on a lot of fun new content for you guys over there. Our patrons mean the world to us. They've shown us great support. So we're working extra hard to make sure that you guys feel like we're earning that money, man. We know money is not easy to come by, right? So we appreciate every single dollar. It makes a difference. We're working our asses off. Guys, you can even, if you go high enough in the tier ranking system, select the specific movies you want us to talk about. Guys, you want to be cool. We're cool. We're the neighbor who has the barbecue. You know, we got the Hawaiian shirt. We're playing Jimmy Buffett, but like you still think we could get it? You're still worried your wife's not going to come back from our lawn party? That's us, man. Come to this party. Bring your wife, and we will not do that because we're gentlemen. I don't know what's happening. That's it. Again, it's patreon.com.
What are you talking about?
slash Film Alchemist Pod. Slash another guy as cool as us. Patreon.com/Film Alchemist Podcast. Guys, you can go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, Film Alchemist. See the faces atop the Hawaiian shirt.
See the very trustworthy faces of your neighbors.
The definitely not terroristic faces.
Definitely not terrorists.
Yeah. We're up to nothing, literally. Guys, make sure you email us, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Wherever you find us, leave a rating and review. 5 stars, a couple cents. You can do it on Spotify, Apple Pod, wherever the hell you're finding podcasts, right? I know there's a ton of apps now. Anywhere you can give us a 5-star and a couple sentences means the world to shows like us. Helps us defeat the algorithmic government that's got to pay for overstepping our ability to reach the masses. We gonna get them. No, we're
I'm
not.
just trying to start my own homegrown gun store. I don't understand.
Also, as a partially Middle Eastern man who has a questionable Google search history, I want to make very clear this is for entertainment's sake, and I do nothing except be American as fuck all the time, guys. So NSA, sorry for all the shit you've had to watch me watch. Don't come after me. All right, guys, without further ado, enough business. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of human relations in today's Bad Neighbor film, Arlington Road. So Alex selected Arlington Road, and I'm glad he did because I've actually never seen this movie until today. I actually really like it too, man. It's fun to go in blind and not know the kind of conversation we're going to have. It's one of those movies I'm actually shocked I never saw with my parents in the time that these movies were coming out. This is
this is 99. It is like a really popular time for like dad movies.
Yeah,
so to
it's
speak.
like the airport paperback with like an American flag on it as done by like a thriller movie, right?
Yeah, a lot of Dean Koontz style.
A lot of that. A lot of Dean Koontzing it up. But this movie is tense. It's fun. It has really good performances. It really milks that, inversion of the Norman Rockwell vision of, white-topias, right, out in the burbs, right, getting out far away from bad stuff, and then, it's not so good. So, Alex, when we were picking our films for Bad Neighbor Month, what made Arlington Road, Rudes, rise to the top?
Oh, I mean, it's like the perfect bad neighbor like scenario. Like it literally is like, hey, what's worse than having a neighbor that will like, keep you up all night and, play loud music and have horrible parties? How about one that'll definitely frame you for terror attacks? Like those kinds of things.
Now, I got to say, this is the thing that fucking caught me off guard, right? Because you're like, this is a pretty paint by numbers kind of narrative, right?
Yeah.
Guy who teaches a terrorism class happens to get, the Zillow bomb of the century with the actual terrorist moving in next door. And you're like, all right, we see where these, strangers on a train are heading, right? We know that destination. This movie makes some fucking wild choices by the end of it. I'll tell you one thing. It was strange to go back and watch an era where we were worried about actual white people terrorists. Like that was something that happened in the news and then in fantasy.
Yeah.
Because now it feels like we're not allowed to call these people terrorists, which they definitely are.
Well, yeah, now we're just in a situation where we're just watching it on the news and everyone's like, "Oh, but they're not terrorists. They're fighting. They're standing up for themselves." Like, nope.
They're not terrorists. They just have Facebook accounts and no media literacy.
They just have Facebook accounts and, size 50 waists. It's different. Yeah, it's very
Hey, leave our people alone. The waist, not the other stuff. NSA, I'm sorry. God damn. My Syrian heritage is red flag, Syrian heritage.
But yeah.
What I'm trying to get across though, right, is when you do most movies that had terrorism, it's your kind of run of the mill, not white people, right? And especially watching this in the post-insurrection world.
Yes.
I just watched a video on Twitter tonight. It blew my mind, right? Of this guy, he brought a gun to a Little League game.
Yep.
And some mom got the footage of, the kids cowering and shit on in this horrifying reality we live in. It was kind of strange to see a movie that actually put a pin on it, right? Because this was obviously a reaction to the Oklahoma City bombing, right?
This is very much in the wake. I mean, not in the wake, obviously. That happened not many years, but a few years prior. But this very much is the idea that, like, what if Timothy McVeigh lived next door to you? Like, how would you?
Yeah.
Or who actually was the big man? Like, the big story throughout, and like one of the major through lines of like thinking through the movie is that terrorism, like domestic terrorists, are lone actors, so to speak. It's something that comes up a lot in the movie, and something that they blame the media for, actually, which is kind of interesting. There's a lot of like these like sort of like, hey, it's not a matter of like, it's like there's a lot of you didn't get all the information. And I think for a movie that is examining this kind of thing, it also, in any other like iteration of this, you would bury the lead pretty hard that Tim Robbins is an actual domestic terrorist. They don't in this movie.
No.
And the tightrope walk you have to do to maintain interest is done really well. Like, it's very interesting because again, like, you're just like, he's so obviously like Timothy McVeigh. I don't understand why we're even standing here. Like, call someone and tell, like, hey.
Yeah, it really hit me in my sweet spot as like a guy in a neighborhood now. Because I do that thing, right, where I like wake up all hungover. I'm like still covered in Taco Bell grease, and I look out my window, and there's like a couple jogging, and it's like fucking pedophiles, right? Like I just start hurling and lobbing accusations, right? Like if someone's out mowing before I like roll out of bed, I'm just like, goddamn Satan worshippers.
Right. Well, I mean the whole movie's baked in this like paranoia grease, so to speak, to go with the to go along with the
That's
analogy.
My favorite kind of grease.
It is
that
just
Nest
like,
grease.
This like baked in paranoia because Jeff Bridges plays this guy who he's not. I mean, they don't teach like terror class in colleges, but not really. Like he's a history professor essentially, dealing a lot in modern history, and so you find out early on that his wife very recently passed away. She was an FBI agent. She was actually murdered in the field while trying to. It's unclear to me until like obviously he does like the field trip thing. It's like a search and seizure, right?
I've got some beefs with the scene where his wife dies.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that. But like basically But this is where the paranoia starts. This is where I think it does a really good job of, because again, like, it is very much like a by the numbers thing. Like, nothing's not on Front Street. But
Yeah.
what's interesting about the movie is it does do this really good job of giving you a lot of pause with Jeff Bridges' character, because he does have this like baked in resentment of law enforcement, of the FBI. Like, you're like, maybe he is just so fucking wound so fucking tight from being a newly widowed father, not single, but widowed father. And, like, maybe he's just seeing things that aren't there.
Yeah, well, I think the best thrillers always function on we know, the character knows, and the tension is the fact that no one will believe them and no one will help them.
Totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's where this movie falls, because even when he's saying it out loud, it seems insane, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just statistically improbable you live next to this guy, right? And again, just the whole high concept of it, right? That, oh, you happen to teach anti-terrorism. Oh, your wife was shot down from the fucking X-Files home episode family. Like, okay.
Right.
By the way, all right, let's just do this now, because fuck this scene. I gotta say. So the movie portrayed, Jeff Bridges takes him out on a field trip, and I'm like, am I getting extra credit for this fucking,
by the
1
way,
hour of commuting?
I don't know about you, but in college, I never went on field trips. Like, that was not a thing we did.
Well, first off, I would skip a class.
I would
just
skip
regularly,
the field trip,
let alone if it's like, hey, will you commute 3 hours to the boonies where people shoot you for coming near their fence line to hear me talk about my wife's tale? And I'd be like, hard pass, professor. If you want to send me like a slideshow, I will scroll through it. But anywho, the beef of this, right, is that he wants the agents and agency and government to tell him that they were wrong and that his wife didn't deserve to die, right? There's a scene when he's saying this in front of Tim Robbins and he breaks down, right? And he's weeping. It still hurts, right? He wants that thing that everyone who loses someone wants, right? You want an answer. And there's just no good reason why people die like this, right? It's just a sad fucking reality. And so we're like, all right, you feel like you understand. Well, then they decide on this field trip to fucking show us what happened. And it's such an unacceptable series of events.
It always is one of those, like, it's always one of those things. Because, again, the movie does such a good job of, like, putting everything on Front Street, but also making you question. This is the one part you're like, no one's going to accept. Like, you're telling me the FBI wouldn't go, we really fucked up. We're really sorry. Like, this was not.
But not only that, right? So first off, you see it's the fucking
absurd.
banjo boy coming back with his fishing rod. And you're just like, hey, kitty, kitty, kitty. Like, they're a bunch of fucking, like, van drivers. Right. And it's like, wait, what? And then he runs. The agents, like, fucking parkour over the fence. This is where it gets strange. What they want us to believe is that this is a family that is hoarding over 100 firearms, right? Newly acquired.
The father is an anti-government person, but he's had no love for the government, but basically he inherited a ton of he inherited an estate, and so he bought a bunch of guns.
Yeah.
With the
got his license and was going to sell them, right?
Yes.
Fine. Let's say all that's okay. The fact that they want us to, Jeff Bridges makes a thing like that this is just a good old American right, is that if people come over your fence, your 10-year-old is supposed to get a fucking gigantic gun and start just fucking slagging human beings, right? Or the fact that the FBI agents are just like, we're going to draw down on that 10-year-old. Well, I'm watching this, and my eyes were just saucer wide. I was like, wait. This is
that part of the night. Like, it's like 97 to 99. There was this, like, sort of like, there was just this sort of moment of like, can we shoot kids on film? All right, let's just do it. Like,
Face Off.
This one, Face Off. Like, there's these moments you're like, oh, I guess we're just doing this. But
I think there are some real scenes, like Waco happened. There's the one in the Northwest.
This stuff happened. The Northwest one, like, but hang on, I have to backtrack up one. Like, there's one other, like, it starts glaringly illogical. Okay, because you have two plainclothes FBI agents who are just like, hey, we want to talk to your dad, and literally it cuts to the two clearly military individuals with earpieces, and then you're just like, what kid who's been raised in a world of suspicion would not be suspicious of these people that are coming to we just want to talk to your dad. No.
Well, this is the problem when we allowed people to just recreationally start wearing camouflage. We never should have let the fucking people of this country. If you're wearing camouflage, you should be prepared for war, right? You should not be at Walmart buying Miller Lite and talking about the big game in flip-flops.
Yeah.
This is what happened. We blurred the lines to where we don't see that as, oh, these are soldiers, right, who are here from an established pillar of society. Now we're just like, well, that could be our fucking neighbors because this is the style that we've adopted, right? We want our legs to be see-through and invisible. It's unacceptable.
I had this pair of camo shorts that I used to wear when Griffey and I worked out at Wipeout, and every time I wore them, Griffey would be like, oh, I blended into the scenery, huh? Every time. Without fail.
I never miss an easy one. But no, it's
every day when we were working.
So as stupid as this scene gets, right? And they just start fucking wasting children. The kid, the older son is such a good marksman. He shoots the one soldier in both of his shins.
Yeah.
But doesn't actually go for the kill shot, I guess. They waste the 10-year-old. The fucking scene, though, right, is that so in the middle of this firefight, Jeff Bridges' wife slides over to just hold a guy's head as he's shot. I guess that's the thing you do. She turns around. There's this lady in a sundress holding a babe.
With
just like a fucking
sawed-off shotgun.
Like a Terminator 2 shotgun, right? Where Arnold's like riding the bike.
Shotgun, yeah.
And I was like, if you fire that by that baby, its head's going to explode from the sound. Right? Your arm's going to rip back. Like he's going to fall and be deformed baby, whatever this kid is. And I was just like, it is madness to me that Jeff Bridges just saying this is like, these were just good old Americans. No one who's just a good old American is holding their baby in one hand while you're out, I don't know, whatever you're doing in a sundress, right?
Well,
walking, picking flowers, and you're like, oh, here's my fucking sawed off.
What it is the worst example of what exactly the movie is trying to say, which is like, you can't just be suspicious of everyone's like, no, you totally should be. Like, you would.
Right. Well, I feel like that's what that scene is trying to tell us, and then the rest of the movie is undercutting that completely.
Well, yeah, like it's like watching a documentary about Dahmer and be like, you know, some people just eat weird meat. Like, no, that's like completely off. Like, no, you're off the reservation when you're eating people. It's a very different
Not only
thing.
that, look at how much work Jeff Bridges has to do into stalking his neighbor. Like, this was it. This movie must take place over months. He had to write a letter or call someone at Kansas State University and say, hey, can you find a yearbook from this year and mail it to me? How long do you think that took? Okay. You think someone's going to, like, fucking hop to and go? He's looking at microfiche newspapers?
The other thing I love about that, by the way, is so he gets the this is like the big confrontation scene when Tim Robbins, like, this is where Tim Robbins basically dimes himself out. He says exactly what's going on. You're like, cool. We get it now. But the yearbook photo that is in that yearbook of Tim Robbins, the face is like, I could not. Again, this is like a serious scene in the movie where the guy, like the domestic terrorist, literally explains his way of life and how he feels about everything. It lays it all out for you. Fully distracted at the top by this guy who has the worst yearbook photo of all time. I'm like that is what I think about, not the speech. That
if you're going to be spying on your neighbor who you think's a terrorist, don't do it in a folding chair and fall asleep.
Do it in your fucking lawn.
Go up to your fucking office. Do it in a garage, right? Go in your garage. Yeah,
it's Virginia,
guy.
Do it in a basement.
This guy wanted to get busted. But, I mean, this movie, for how fun it is, this movie has a baffling logic to it, right? Because apparently Tim Robbins is not actually a terrorist. Tim Robbins is a recruiter of terrorists.
Yes.
So Tim Robbins somehow has to find people that have been wronged by the government, move in as their neighbors. I still don't know if the opening of the film, if we're supposed to believe that Tim Robbins blew his son's hand up, or if that was a lucky coinky dink to get the fucking neighbor back over, right? But essentially, yeah, the idea that he is finding this guy and luring him into terrorism, that I was not prepared for, right? If this was this guy's a bomber and I got to stop him.
Yeah.
That I can follow. Are you getting fucking groomed?
Yeah.
to fucking be the terror, because you start to get hints of it, right?
Well, it's not that you're just getting set up. Like, you're getting played really hard.
But there's one thing to be played, right? The logical leaps that have to occur for this to go down. Like, one, you have to know that he rented a car, know that he's going to follow, like, the FBI guy's going to tell him where the payphone was, because they had no way of knowing that had happened, right? So from that payphone, you have to time the van so that he follows you to Liberty. Then you have to do hey, we're going to go over here, match it with another Liberty, and then hope that the guys at the FBI guard shack, right, aren't going to, like, stop him and that he's going to fucking do a ramp over, right? This meek college professor is going to do a ramp over. The amount of steps that have to occur for this to happen, besides the fact there are two huge fucking loose threads at the end of this, right? One, the neighbor who he's told like 10 people is a terrorist have his kid, right? Never done crimes before. He literally went to the FBI agent and said, hey, man, can you run these names? This guy's a terrorist.
Yeah.
Presumably, the FBI agent would have access to all of the fucking research that he did via
also,
the mail.
Like, so clearly be able to say, oh, yeah, that guy's flagged. Cool.
The FBI terrorism guy just goes, are you talking about the pipe bomb thing? Come on. You're like, yeah, that's not a red flag at all. That's not a big deal that he tried to fucking pipe bomb a government agency. No big deal.
It's just such a weird, like, again, it's this movie, and it's this movie about, like, the ineptitude of, like, it's not even big government, but, like, the ineptitude of law enforcement as it's supposed to actually function versus, like,
is this a movie,
some
though,
gentleman
right?
Gumshoe who got his hands on a terrible yearbook photo and found out this guy was a terrorist?
Well played. We're not going to do anything, but well played. I will watch the Netflix show of that. No. I think this gets to this idea, right? He talks about in his first thing, right? We see McVeigh and the Unabomber.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't see McVeigh. They fictionalize him as a
it's a guy named Ian Scobie, I believe.
Right. And he blew up a building and killed a daycare and shit, just like in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
I think what this movie's getting at, though, right, is there's a couple of these kind of big things swirling around in the film, right? And one is that he even says that, right, at a time, because the 90s was a time of prosperity, right, as I remember, right? Everything was good, balancing the budget, all that kind of bullshit you'd hear about, right, from your parents. At a time when we are the wealthiest and most stable and safe that we've ever been, why are so many of these fucking middle-class white guys falling off the grid and becoming so fucking anti-government?
Right.
And I think one of the things that the movie's doing with Tim Robbins, who, of course, has already played a cold-blooded killer in Shawshank Redemption, is it can't be that guy. It can't be the white guy with kids who has a minivan who lives next door to me. We are unable to accept that danger can be that close to us because it forces us into decision, right? The same thing he said about Scobie is the reason that they rush investigations and just want to say one guy can do this is because as soon as we name it, we can fucking forget about it. And I think that's actually a really fascinating subplot of this movie that has become so much fucking scarier today, right? Because those people, the Tim Robbins of the world, they're not having terrorist barbecues now with like winks and knocks and handshakes.
Right.
They're just online.
Yeah.
And they're doing this shit out loud for all of us to see at all times. And it is kind of scary, right? Because there is a line in the movie where he goes, what does this look like, you know, as it keeps going? And I was like, now. It looks a lot like fucking now. And I thought that was chilling, right? Like that part of the movie really aged well.
Yeah. I think that part of the movie really ages well, but like, and again, this is the showing all your cards at like within the first like 45 minutes of the movie. You're like, all right, what surprises may be left?
Well, they even go so far as like when he drops his kid off at like the Little Rascals retreat or whatever.
Yeah.
Tim Robbins waves at him and he literally does the fucking Nazi sign and then just does like a little twist at the top. And I'm like, we get it. We fucking get it. Stop.
But here's like, this is what I was getting at though, is the secret weapon of this movie is Joan Cusack.
Fucking Joan Cusack.
Because here's like Joan Cusack has
Weapon
never
of mass awesomeness.
Joan Cusack has never been anything other than genial and lovely in any movie she's been in.
Except for the Addams Family.
Except for the Addams Family. She was billed that way. Was it? I thought it was Addams Family Values.
I think that's the one where they get Fester back, right? He'd been lost in the Bermuda Triangle, and she's trying to... Or no, that is part 2, where she tries to marry him and kill him.
Addams Family Values, she tries to marry him.
Nice. Okay. Well done.
So, but here's like... But like, okay, this one, so she plays Tim Robbins' wife. Or whatever they are, as we find out, like whatever sort of arrangement they have. But the scene that scared the shit out of me is like, if I remember the first time I saw this, I think I was watching it for a class. I don't remember what class it was. It probably
Walking Through the Woods Terrorism 101.
No, it was honestly like a film study class. I honestly don't remember why I saw it, but either way, so Joan Cusack has Hope Davis plays Jeff Bridges' girlfriend in the movie, and she's basically, we all spend the first 45 minutes of the movie watching people just go, dude, you are out of your mind, Jeff Bridges. Like, he's not a terrorist. Leave him alone. He's just your new fucking neighbor, and you don't like people.
He's
like,
an emotional terrorist. It's like,
so
can you stop soliloquying about your dead wife and your girlfriend's present?
Who cares, dude? So
if you weren't ready, don't start dating your TA.
So Hope Davis, the TA, who you're definitely not supposed to do that with, whatever.
She's like, not back then, but now it's like, sure.
She does like a follow for Tim Robbins.
She catches him in a mall
parking lot, like changing vehicles.
Yeah, she's just there doing her fucking shopping at the mall, and they don't even hide the fucking handoff.
No, they don't. They're in plain sight. But here's like, this is the Joan Cusack moment that, like, honestly, like the first time I saw it, and today I watched it again, and also chilling, like literally down my spine shivers, was she calls him from the payphone. She's like, I think you're right. Oh my God, I'll be home soon.
Oh my God.
Hangs it up, and Joan Cusack's just standing right there, and they're having like the very normal conversation that you would have with like, hey, what are you doing here? Oh, shopping. And then Joan Cusack's face drops. And like, that's when you know for sure. Like, you knew for sure the entire time, but you weren't entirely, like, the Joan Cusack face drop scares the shit out of me every single time.
These terrorists in this family, they're like the butler from Mr. Deeds. Betty sneaky, Betty sneaky. Very sneaky. He fucking walks into him on the microfiche room. On campus, and I was like, close the door. What's your fucking problem? Like, they always are just doing the old pop-up, right? Like, was Tim Robbins just like looking through a knothole in the fence to see when he pulled the yearbook out, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna get him now. I'll let him fall asleep, and then I'll kick a chair and act all rough and be tough. Dude, they're so Betty sneaky. But I'll tell you, Joan Cusack's amazing. If I had a beef, this movie needs more Joan Cusack. Because that scene when she's buttering him up at the end of the kitchen table, and they're talking about where do you get your values from, you're like, oh, this is like a neighbor conversation that I've been in, where like you'll say something as a joke, and then all of a sudden you'll like see your neighbors like react, and you're like, oh yeah, we don't share politics, right? Like, we don't share worldviews and this and that. We live together, our kids play together, so we're all like on the same page, you think. And then that thing will hit, and you'll see the ripple, and you're like, oh. And you're like, when they go home tonight, they're going to be like, that fucking Griffey guy's such a cunt. I can't believe he said this and this and this. Right. And you're like, okay. So you forget, right? You build these relationships on, you just come out in the morning and wave and hi.
Totally.
We're all in proximity, so we have to be friends. See, I'm dying thinking about it. But you never know, right? And so that scene gave me chills, too, because I'm like, oh, she's prodding to see if he's one of them. She
wants to know so that it's like, see, that's the other part too, is like, it's not just recruitment. It's also this sense of like, is this person going to be a good setup?
Well, let me ask you this, right? Do you think that they moved to that house trying to get Jeff Bridges, or that in the scene when he breaks down crying, that's when they decide they can get him?
I think it's the latter, personally. I don't think it has anything to, like, Jeff Bridges is a great patsy because he has very strong motive. So you can throw the scent off of your own misdoings if you have a guy who literally lost his wife on the job, on her government job, and no one's willing to say sorry about it. It makes sense. I mean, like, you have a disgruntled person, a disgruntled man. They say it at the end of the movie. I love we can get to that later. But
that's another thing I forgot to mention in the worst FBI partner of all time, who probably did get his wife killed because he's an idiot. How did they not figure out he didn't run back and do the Scobie thing and be like, oh, there was a little kid named Lang in the troop, and okay, like, come on, guys, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's something to that scene that's very, very real, man. It's weird to think about breaking down and being fully honest with your neighbors. As much as you talk, I feel like there's so much of that, like Stepford Wives, like fronting. You're so very rarely all the way open. Because you just never know, man. You never know. And you don't want to make it weird as fuck. Like, hey, remember when I cried at your house last week? Now we have to talk while our kids fucking throw rocks at each other. This is great. This is wonderful. I love it. So, yeah, man, it sent chills down my spine. Also, the little fucking Children of the Damned kids. Horrifying.
Yeah.
Okay, do you think he blew his son's hand up? Or that his son found some of his explosions?
I think his son found some of his explosions.
Because that's another one where you're like, shouldn't a cop be able to get to the bottom of this pretty fucking quick?
I mean, again, like, the biggest logic problem in this movie is, like, there is nothing that is preventing law enforcement from just hunkering down on these guys and Wacoing them out of their house.
Yeah.
And yet, it's like, yeah, they seem normal to me. It's fine.
Well, just the FBI guy that's like, sorry I got your wife murdered. Also, fuck you. I'm not going to help you with anything.
Yeah, I'm not helping you with anything.
Granted, it'd be great for my career to bust a terrorist, but also, I just kind of want to keep making it worse for you.
Yeah,
like, you come to visit your wife's grave. I'm just going to do a pop-in. I'm going to do a pop-in and rub it in your face.
I'm going to do a pop-in real quick.
Like, what? What are you doing?
There's this real, like, sentiment of, and again, like, because eventually, like, 35 minutes into the movie, we stop thinking Jeff Bridges is just like looking for trouble, and we're like, oh shit, there's actually something going on here. Like, and there is this prevailing sentiment of, and I don't understand why they do this in the movie. This is always something that bothers me, is like, it is this oneness of Jeff Bridges' character, like trying to just solve it on his own. I'm like, hey, Karen of the neighborhood, don't take it upon yourself.
He tried to ask for a terrorist specialist from the FBI.
But see, here's the problem: is like,
off.
Don't go. But that's the other thing too, though. Like, and this is also part of this like logic gap, like happenstance. Like, well, we all knew that was going to happen. Is because like Tim Robbins, there has to be some sort of supernatural there's just no way Tim Robbins didn't like mentally tell him to go to the FBI, because like, you can just go to the cops who don't even know you and just be like, hey, I'm pretty sure this guy's got
a guy at the FBI. Here's the one where you're like, this is like insanity. How did they kill his girlfriend? That is not a very steep hill where she rolled down that hill. You're like, I could do that in the Prius. I could get down that hill just fine. I probably couldn't go fast enough to break through the barrier, but how the fuck did she die in there?
I've always assumed that it was Joan Cusack like beating her and then throwing her down.
Right, that's what I'm saying, but that's the kind of shit. It's not burning car. That should be autopsyable, so hopefully after the movie ends, there will be some, we're going to get it.
He's in the wind. But
then we see like a time jump, and it feels like the terrorists have won, right? Because the movie wants us to be scared and afraid of all of our fucking white neighbors. That's just how it's going to go.
Which I am. Yeah.
But no, I'm just saying, that's a scene where I'm like, that should be a little more important, right? That, oh man, his kid was gone. He's looking for his kid in a van, right? He went to the van crazy and said, my kid, my kid. His kid was gone with the guy he said was a terrorist who has multiple names, who tried to blow up an agency. His girlfriend definitely died. He definitely got a mysterious payphone call from them the night she died. No, I'm not saying anything. All right, there's no breadcrumbs for me. Like, Hansel and Gretel are just like, I'm fucking hungry. Can we just eat the breadcrumbs? There's no witches in these woods. That's poppycock, right? It's it is a baffling. But the scene when he goes to the house and he's like, yeah, I locked myself out. And he's
Right.
got to go in, and the little girls are just like the most mean-mugging little kids you've ever seen, right? Like,
Right,
I'm like,
right.
oh, so they're already terrorists. The little girl's like 3 years old. She's already got terrorist face. But when he leaves, because Joan
Terrorist
Cusack
face?
busts him. Yeah, wrestling terrorist face.
Yeah.
And Joan Cusack busts him, right, in the study. And he's, oh, I locked my keys, blah, blah, blah. And the girl comes out, and she's like, oh, you forgot your bag. And the little girl goes, and your phone. And she's like 7 years old, and I was like, oh, my God. No! It was... That family creeped the fuck out of me. Like, that should have been a pretty, like, you should not. I wouldn't let my kid go over there. I don't need the terrorist shit. Just like,
see, and here's the
can't
other
hang out
thing
with those
though
kids.
is there's a level. Like, I also don't think that they were just to the kids. Like, because
you think they're little operatives? You're doing an orphan thing?
oh well, I think the end of the movie tells us that, doesn't
Little
it?
Esters?
Yeah,
I think they
So-
fucked and made their own kids as part of their cover story.
I think one of them is their own kid. Like, I think the boy with his hand blown off is their own kid. I
Yeah?
think the other. This is why, because the way this movie because of the way this movie ends. Like, for one, I don't. Okay, when he crashes into the FBI building to like prevent the van from blowing everyone up, and he realizes he's been had. The lighting effects, I've never understood why that happens. Like, it's just the weirdest
Flare.
It is very like oddly dramatic, and it is also this like awesome time capsule of like 90s filmmaking. You're like, if anybody did that in 2022, you'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Like, it would have to be like super surreal. But at the end of the movie, the boy has already been going to, is it Discoverers? Is that the group? Yeah. The boy's already been going to the Discoverer camp. He's already been learning these new things. How do we know that like they've just taken him? They've recruited him. He's gone. He's gone in the wind. This is another. They're building their army. That's all I thought. That's all I've assumed.
I think he recruited someone else's kid, but I think those are his actual kids.
I think he's recruited all those kids.
You think he's
like,
just
who's
picking them up as he goes?
Who's to say he hasn't pulled this fucking flim flam once or twice before?
I think he's done this flim flam at least twice.
I think this flim flam's been going on for a long time.
He's got 3 kids. I don't know.
What I'm saying is, I
you think
that-
terrorists don't fuck? Like they're too professional on the job?
No, that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm saying is that I think
She's just like, don't put that wick in this C4. The explosion could bring our whole operation down.
Well, they don't want to catch feels, that's the big thing. Can't
And
catch feels.
He's like, I'm too reckless of a terrorist. I can't be caught with a condom. It'll
Listen,
ruin
you
my
can't
street
catch
cred.
feels you can't catch feels in the domestic terror game. Everyone knows that.
I'm not going to blow up in a condom. I only blow things up when there's collateral damage. So maybe on the face or chest area. But don't like it. We're full of hate and piss and vinegar.
But
She's
to
like,
me,
don't steal my heart like the government stole your pa's crick.
Oh my. Okay, yeah. Also, he said crick. I was like, come on, man.
I like that because that is specifically an Indiana
That is an
thing.
Indiana thing, man.
I think it's a whole Midwest, but my mother-in-law says crick and poosh and warsh. So we have some of those Midwestern affectations. I
Sure.
thought that was funny.
But ultimately, yeah, I mean, for me, the ultimate thing is you find that Tim Robbins' bit is he finds a target, someone who's going to be not just a solid patsy, but someone who has no way of because look, the girlfriend's gone. She could have spoken. Whit thinks he's a crazy person anyways.
Yeah.
And now the boy does too. The boy is convinced that his father was a domestic terrorist the entire time.
I do wonder. That kind of bothered me by the end. I think the trying to outsmart the room and I'm going to make my neighbor a terrorist didn't add a lot for me, right? I'm a fucking terrorist and at the end I'm going to sneak this bomb in your car. That's enough, right? We don't need to see that the news is just so happy to name someone so that we think, it's like the version of the Halloween ending where we hear Michael breathing and just see shots of happy suburban life.
Well, that is
it's just because it's one of those weird things. It makes for a good ending, but then you start going back through the rest of the film and it just makes everything so far.
Well, that's what kind of blows the social commentary for me. Because originally it's just it's an aside. You're like, oh wow, I never thought about that. You always assume these guys don't work alone, but we do usually just blame one person for all this, don't we? This is kind of a more that is a nuanced thing that I don't think any of us, like particularly the media, we always need to have a bad guy, you know?
Yeah.
So,
well, also, like, Ted Kaczynski lived alone in the woods, right? So you're like, well, yeah, of course that guy's deranged.
yeah.
When it's your neighbor and you're like, wow, he plays soccer in the front yard and he's got a job and, you know, he has dinners and fucking barbecues and shit. Like, to think that that kind of a fucking guy, right? It's like the Superman thing, right? That why would Superman just pretend to be a square, right? Why wouldn't Superman be like, oh, yeah, I'm like a guy who owns a karaoke bar. Right. And I'm just going to like, it's all karaoke's and pasties in here.
Well, like,
come over to Clark's.
It's always the
Clark's
beat,
boob
like,
shack.
Like that like hiding in plain sight thing is what they're trying to do through most of the movie. But again,
anyone who met that 7-year-old girl would know something's wrong.
Well, like, yeah, exactly. Like the logic leap though in hiding in plain sight is like, okay, but like what you can't do is be literally like Googleable with a fucking, you know, I mean, looking up a fucking the worst yearbook photo ever. Like, no one should be able to do that.
Also, not Google. You had to do like snail mail
you had to
research.
do actually snail mail back then.
So somewhere he had to really hate this guy. Somewhere deep in him, he hated him before, and he knew.
Interesting. I never thought about it that way. You think he actually knew Jeff Bridges beforehand?
No, I think he just hated him. I think he was like getting shown up, right? Because what's the thing?
What if? Okay,
it's when he tells him at the batting cages, right? Where he's like, yeah, I talked to your son about his dead mom and how the government should pay. And I think Jeff Bridges right there is like, this guy sucks and I need to find a wedge issue to pry him out of my life. I think that's the moment he's like, I will go to any amount. That guy had to go to the post office like 15 times.
Right. Okay. Here's a question for you, and I want to know. This is important. As important as Arlington Road can be.
Did I do anything terrible when I was 16?
No, I'm not going to let you give the speech. Do you think that Tim Robbins' character, obviously he knew of Jeff Bridges beforehand, like knew who he was, understood the circumstances of like his wife's death, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think he found out though, not through the paper, but through the Pappy's land, those folks that were hoarding the guns?
So here's an aside, right? There's a part when Jeff Bridges is beating him up in that like fuck shack by the parking garage, right? Where he stops him.
Definitely an F shack.
And he goes, yeah, that's like a creepy F shack. And he goes, I sent your wife to her death. And they also say Daddy wasn't home, right? We never see the man who's on the fucking place. So if he was part of the terrorist cell and that whole family were terrorists, right?
Right.
And it was this fucking elaborate ruse, right? Because if he sent her there and wasn't there and it was this big fucking frame up, that's really strange, but it's not like an impossible leap of logic based on other leaps of logic in the film. Tim Robbins specifically says, I sent your wife to her death, right? We know that Jeff Bridges earlier in the movie, right? She died for her country. Well, she shouldn't have, right? I think there's a part where, if not finding specifically, that in that moment, he saw that guy, right? An anti-terrorism professor who just had his wife killed in this fucking like blown raid for sure makes a target, right? Then you have to wonder, how long did the terrorist cell have to sit on fucking Realtor.com to find a listing across the street from this guy? Did they fucking kill the neighbors? Like, whatever, right? They're killing people willy-nilly. Right. But he specifically said he was involved in the wife's murder. So that's why I think this whole movie is, they're there specifically for Jeff Bridges, which makes me think that they fucked the kid up on purpose at the start of the movie.
Well, they definitely fucked the kid up. Oh, that's a good point.
But then Tim Robbins kind of like, you saved my son, I want to return the favor. Maybe that was serendipitous because they had lived there for 2 months beforehand.
Well, you got to establish a baseline. I mean, for me, I think the other reason that Jeff Bridges was such a great target was because they knew that he was still connected to the FBI. They knew he could get in without. See, that's like when he barrels down into the parking garage, like the only one unauthorized to be here is you, Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit. like this is a whole thing. Like that to me has always struck me as like, okay, that's the only part that kind of starts to tie things together. Because again, most of it is insane logic leaps, but that really that beat is like, all right, I'll give you that. Like that can get you there.
Yeah, but it's that kind of moment, right, where I think they lay it out pretty well, right? I think it's the screenwriter admitting, like, well, I fell in love with this concept, right? A terrorism professor fights a terrorist, right? He's just telling us that we are in love with that kind of story, right? This last week, all I've been watching is, audio tapes of John Wayne Gacy, right? Like hearing it from his own mouth, right? The same thing with Dennis Nielsen or whatever, the fucking British serial killer. And I just love hearing serial killers talk about how they see this shit. We are fucking fascinated by these things. So I think what they're saying, too, is that the media are just suckers because we're suckers, right?
Totally. No,
it's
that's
not
exactly
the media's fault that we fucking sit there like fatted calves in Wall-E chairs and say, feed us the bad shit.
No, the media gives... The media and also us at large give license for quote unquote the bad guy.
Yeah.
We have to have a face to blame for all this,
We want the orderly
misery.
Storytelling, right? We are a storytelling creature, and this is how we do it.
Well, yeah, what we want is order to the universe. Like,
right.
It seems like such a senseless act of violence, so what is the purpose behind it? Well, this person's disgruntled. That makes total sense. Like, this one person definitely did it because if anybody else was involved, they're still out there, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, that's the other thing, too, is like, if you get the boogeyman, you get the boogeyman. I think it works twofold, which is you need a villain, but also you need to admit that you need to tell, like, you need to tell your kid nothing's under the bed and nothing's in the closet, and then show them that nothing's in the closet too. Like that's
but
what the
more
media
than even
all of us try to do.
Boogeyman is we want a boogeyman who's been extinct, right? Like the first thing we did as a species, right, when we started writing stories and art and this and that is, wow, we don't know how anything works and it's scary. Let's invent God, right? So we do that, right? That covers all the unknowns, right? Society advanced a little bit. Oh, there's like unruly shit and people are murdering. Let's invent enemy states, right? So we can go over there and fuck them up. That's them. It's over there. Right. And I think as that's progressed, we're just so much more refined now, right? We love the bad guy. We are obsessed with serial killers. We like the idea that it's easier for us to tell our kids, like, wow, look at that horrible thing on the news. But that guy blew up with the building, so all good. Let's go back to watching fucking Jeopardy, right? Because we don't want to actually sit and think about having to do anything about problems, right?
Right.
It's the same thing, Elon Musk buys Twitter, and all of a sudden everyone's like, fucking Twitter, blah, blah. He could have fixed world hunger, this and that and that. And it's like, all right, but, like, also we're not doing anything to fix world hunger. Like, I know he's a piece of shit, but if it bothers you that much, what are we doing to fix it, right? We don't want to actually do anything. We want to fucking... name it, put it over there, bad guy, run away, right? We've shown our indignation. We're all good. We move on. So I think the terrorist plot in this movie is also kind of a finger pointing at us.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't know. Look, I think maybe like that's where their version of terrorists are coming from too, is that they bought into this myth of the American founding as well, right? Like it's just all these. What myth do you choose to believe in?
Well, it's like it's so rare that. Well, no, I guess it's not rare, but we always get to choose. We always choose our villains, and I think that's like the thing about, and this is what I like about Arlington Road, and not just because it's a movie about the world's worst neighbor, but also ultimately like
Jeff
what
Bridges,
it is about.
I agree.
Ultimately, what it's about though is the willingness we have to. The willingness we have to take something at face value.
Yeah.
And the people that aren't, and I'm not saying that anybody's necessarily wrong for like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but as we've all learned, doing your own research doesn't always necessarily predict
Very
Truth.
few people who have said that in the last year since the pandemic are actually doing as much mailing and receiving of information as Jeff Bridges.
You are not wrong.
First off.
So I would say, but like Jeff Bridges being the character that he is in this movie. And by the way, special shout out too. I love watching Jeff Bridges. Like, I know that we all just think of him as the dude because he was the dude and it's an iconic role. This is like, it's like this, The Contender. Like, there was a pocket in the late 90s when he was just doing these kinds of parts. White Squall.
Yeah.
He's so good.
I just love
in
Jeff
these
Bridges,
parts.
man.
Jeff Bridges is just a great actor, but this particular
he was like an intense like uncle character, right?
This particular like era of Jeff Bridges, where before he like grew the dude beard and that kind of stuff. Or maybe it was after. I don't even remember when The Big Lebowski came out. But either way, Jeff Bridges is so good. You do buy like the emotional core value of his character. Like you buy it the entire time.
No, the cast is phenomenal, right? And so the performances are great.
Yeah.
And whatever the narrative is, right, is kind of silly as it gets at times. The tension building is right
Superb.
on. Like they really hit the mark in, dragging out this tension, right? And I think the movie does a great job at all of the things that are very important to this kind of movie, right? Now, at the end, I will not say that I was super satisfied with the Jeff Bridges done it, everyone's going to get away, but honestly, it's different. Most of these movies end with him, jumping out of his car, fighting into a van, jumping away from it, like shit that a normal guy couldn't do.
Every single movie like this, like he figures it out before it becomes a thing. This is the one though where, again, I appreciate the effort the script goes to give me something that I was not expecting, and then also like you're left with this really horrible ambiguity. Like, it's not unambiguous about like how you feel about terrorism.
Yeah. Well, what the movie's telling you is that if you do nothing and look away, people die.
Yes.
If you try really, really hard, you die and your kid's an orphan with no mom or dad because of terrorism.
And they're going
to both of the parents try to fix it and die. So the movie specifically telling us to not take action to stop terrorism, which I think is a weird thing that the movie probably didn't mean to say. But the movie, when I watched the end of this movie and I was like, well, it's going to blow up anyways. I'm not going to fucking stick my kids in an orphanage.
Right.
I'll stay home and weed eat. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I think that's the weird, shitty part of the ending. Right?
Sure.
But, I think maybe also that's driving home to us that, if we don't tackle terrorism at large, we could be one of the people in any of these buildings, man. It could be anywhere. It could be us. They could be taking our kids to fucking, Discover camps or whatever. I don't know, man. I just thought it was a thrilling, really fun ride. The cast is fucking righteous.
Agreed.
And again, it's kind of a movie that I'm glad I saw now because I feel like it fits in this world in a really interesting way in modern times.
It does.
So,
agreed.
Cool ass movie, man. That's it for Arlington Road. That's not it. For the month of Bad Neighbors, we come back with a strange entry because are these neighbors bad or are they actually giving this lady the deal of a lifetime? In Rosemary's Baby, we're going to talk about Rosemary's Baby. Free rent? Free rent? Does that tickle your interest? I don't know. Do you want
rent?
Coffee and food in bed? I don't know.
The coming of someone's Lord?
There is that kind of, horrifying act in the middle.
That's not great.
That's not great. Pros and cons with Rosemary's Baby. I don't know. I have children that just act like devils, and I don't get anything in bed.
Listen, on this show, we like to weigh out the pros and cons. We don't
sound like I'm a Catskill comedian when I'm doing that.
Yeah,
my kids were devils, and I got nothing for it. Doozies.
Yeah, you're definitely doing a little cat skills thing. I like it. Hey!
No. An exciting, amazing film that I can't believe it took us this long to get to. Rosemary's Baby to close out the Pod Has Terrible Neighbors month. So, again, patreon.com/Film Alchemist Pod for more awesome content. Film Alchemist is the YouTube channel. filmalchemistpod@gmail.com is our email. Find us on all the social media on. Leave us a 5-star rating and review if you'd be so kind. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino. Don't be domestic terrorists, folks.